What are the 3 Arora R's of interpersonal when it comes to your consultation or your case? I'm Dr. Arora from Arora Medical Education, and I've been teaching doctors pass exams like plab 2, RCA, CBSA, CSA for a number of years now. And one of the common themes that we talk about are the 3 Arora R's of interpersonal, because interpersonal is an area that a lot of doctors struggle with. Now, I'm dressed like this, if you're wondering, because I'm literally about to go to my cousin's wedding. We're in the beautiful city of Chandigarh in India. You can probably see Chandigarh behind me. It's a beautiful winter's evening. A bit of sun out there, so I hope it doesn't get in the way of the video too much. But yeah, I'm literally on the way to my cousin's wedding, very excited. I'm just waiting for a cab. We've got about 12 minutes for the cab to come. So I thought I'd do this really quick video because this is a video that a lot of people ask me about, the 3 Arora R's of interpersonal. Now, you may have seen this on our courses, our webinars, our other videos, but let's break down these 3 Arora R's. They're all to do with the first half, the data gathering. We've got videos on what data gathering is and how to do that somewhere else on the channel, so check those out. But the 3 Arora R's that help bridge the gap between a set of questions, i.e. data gathering or history, into a conversation rather than a tick box exercise that sounds very doctor-centered and formulaic, and all those buzzwords that you often get marked down for when it comes to interpersonal skills. So Arora R number one for interpersonal is reasoning. Now, reasoning is basically correct signposting, and it's linked with the first Arora bubble that you may have seen or heard about on the channel for red flags. Now, reasoning is important for not just the person in front of you, but reasoning is important for all 3 people involved in the assessment: the role player stroke patient, yourself, and for any assessor. So for example, someone comes in with low back pain. We've got lots of examples like this all over the channel and on the courses. Someone comes with back pain, we know we need to ask about urine symptoms and incontinence and leg symptoms, for example, and maybe fevers and injuries. But the patient may not be expecting all those questions. So you have to reason it first, Mr. X, when it comes to low back pain, like what you're describing. There are a couple of kind of yes, no questions, medical questions that we'd like to ask first. Just going to run through a few of them if that's okay. Now, by putting that reasoning in, number one, you're telling the patient or the role player that, look, this is coming and this is why it's coming. You may think that you're coming for back pain and we're going to give you like a gel or something very simple to help with it. But actually, you're telling them that these questions I'm going to be asking about that may seem unrelated, for example, urine symptoms, are all to do with your presentation. So reasoning it to the role player or the patient is important, but also, like I said, you're reasoning it to an assessor. So somebody who's watching or listening, you're telling them, look, I'm about to do basically my red flags now, so please get ready to listen and mark them. But you're also reasoning it for yourself, your own mind, because when you reason to yourself, when you give yourself the heads up that I'm about to do red flags, you're much more likely to do it in a short, succinct way where you forget less, or the opportunity to forget an important red flag is much less. So the first Arora R for interpersonal is reasoning, and most of us, to be honest, do this one quite well. The second Arora R is relevance. Now, this is most important when it comes to the psychosocial bubble when we talk about the 3 Arora bubbles of data gathering. Why? Because lots of people will ask about home and work and smoking and alcohol and stress and diet and sleep and all these kind of things that are very important in the psychosocial world. But often it comes out again as a tick box exercise, as if I have to ask these questions to score the marks. Now, when you start to think about relevance, then again, you're helping everybody in that scenario, that situation. So when you make a question relevant, you're trying to make it relevant to that person at that point. So you're demonstrating there's a reason behind what I'm doing, as opposed to let me just go through a list of things that I have to ask everybody. So for example, when someone comes in, I don't know, with let's say dyspepsia or indigestion, we know we need to ask about caffeine and smoking and alcohol and all that kind of stuff, stress levels, but make it relevant. Mrs. X, when it comes to indigestion, there are a couple of things in our lifestyle that can either impact these symptoms or make them worse, or the symptoms that people have can impact their lifestyle in certain ways. I'm just going to ask you a couple of things about you and your lifestyle just to see if there are any links. Now, once again, when you do that, you're giving the role player or the patient a heads up that these questions aren't random. There's some relevance behind them. Secondly, you're showing an assessor that I have chosen these questions based on the presentation, not that I have to just do them to try and get marks. So please give me all the marks for psychosocial, okay? So relevance is very important to demonstrate that you're choosing those questions to make it more patient-centered. And then when you go through that psychosocial bubble, make sure you keep bringing the relevance back every time. So Mrs. X, like I mentioned, certain habits like smoking or alcohol can make indigestion worse. Can I check if we do any of those? So if I'm bringing the indigestion back every time I ask a particular question, Mrs. X, sometimes stress can lead to worsening symptoms like the ones you're describing. Can I check how are things at work? Is it quite stressful? What do you do? again, rather than just saying, what do you do for a job, you're making the question relevant. So the second Arora R for interpersonal is relevance, and really try and practice that when you do your cases and consultations. And the third Arora R is reflection. And this is something that we teach quite a lot in our courses because it makes such a difference in terms of how the rapport is built, or how the other side reacts, or how you react to when the other side give you information. Now, reflection is most usually talked about in the way we teach with the ice bubble. Because when you're doing ICE, you're asking questions about the patient's mind, and we've got plenty of videos on the channel about what ICE is and how to do it. But essentially, you're trying to understand issues of the mind. Now, when a patient tells you something from their mind, it could be something that they wanted, it could be something that they were worried about. You may be the very first person that's heard this. This might be quite a big thing that they're telling you that maybe they've been hiding for many years or keeping inside for many years. If you don't reflect that back, then it sounds like you just needed to know that information to pass an exam. You just have to go ICE, thank you for the marks, let's move on. Now, by reflecting things back, you show the genuineness that I genuinely wanted to know what was in your mind, because for me as a clinician, that is important to try and manage you as a whole in the second half. So for example, let's go back to our back pain case. If someone comes and says, and you ask them the ICE question. So for example, let's go back to the back pain case. Now, you're going to be going through ICE questions at some point. Mrs. X, what do you think was going on? You've had back pain for a while. What were your thoughts about all of this? Oh, doctor, I'm pretty sure I just pulled a muscle in my back. I've been, I do a lot of lifting. I was lifting some heavy shopping the other day, and I must have done something when I did that. Now, most people will just move away from that straight away. Think, thank you, right? Her idea is she's lifted something and caused a muscle problem, and you move on to either concern or to another direction altogether. Now, by reflecting that information back before you jump to the next question, you're demonstrating a genuineness of wanting to know what they just said. So Mrs. X, you're absolutely right. A lot of people come with back pain, and a lot of the times it is muscle problems caused by things like lifting. So I can see why you think that. But by saying that, by reflecting that back, you're showing that I genuinely have taken that in, and I'm going to use that later on when we have our discussion. Then you move on to the C part. Now, Mrs. X, you've had this for a long period of time now. You've obviously come to see us about this. Was there anything in particular that was worrying you about this? And we've talked about, again, making sure the concern question is right in other videos, so have a look back and see those as well. But she may come back to you with something like, I don't know, doctor, I do a lot of lifting at work, to be honest. I'm constantly up and down. And look, if I can't do that, if it gets that bad, then what am I going to do for a job? I need my job. I've got 2 kids to look after. Now, if you just move straight on from that, then you've broken that kind of rapport straight away, because she's told you something quite important. She's told you that she's worried about her job. She's got 2 children. If you don't reflect those things back, again, it sounds quite coarse, as if I just had to know that information. Thank you. Let's move on to the next bit of information, i.e. the next bit of data that I need to gather from you. Reflect that back. Mrs. X, I can see why it's a big deal. Lifting obviously is an important part of your job, and we'll talk about your job later and maybe see how that might, what we can do to help with that. So you don't give an answer or solution or anything at this point. You just reflect back the fact that she's worried about her work and she's linked it to her current problem. And then you might move on to E, expectation. Mrs. X, obviously you've tried a couple of painkillers yourself. Was there anything in particular that you thought that we could do for all of this? Now, she may say, I don't know, doctor, my uncle, he had a lot of back problems, and he had an X-ray and an MRI scan and all sorts of scans. And I just wonder if I need those early to make sure we're not missing anything. Now, if you don't reflect that back and move straight on to, thank you very much, let's move on to the next question, it's just left hanging. It's kind of left as if, well, what does doctor think about that? I've never told that to anybody else before. Do I need a scan or not? I'm not sure. Again, if you reflect it back, not answer, but reflect it back, it builds that bridge of rapport that I genuinely wanted to know what you just told me. So Mrs. X, absolutely right. We do sometimes do X-ray scans for lower back pain, not in all cases, but maybe once we've had a discussion, examined you perhaps, we can see if it's right for you or not. And then you move on. So that third R, reflection, is important in ICE, for example, but also reflecting mood, reflecting anxiety, reflecting emotion. Again, the more you can reflect in your consultations, the better that rapport, the better the link that's built between you and that person, and therefore the better the overall interpersonal skills that you'll be demonstrating. Now, I've covered those 3 things very quickly, the 3 Arora R's of interpersonal. R number 1, reasoning. R number 2, relevance. R number 3, reflection. If you haven't heard about these things before, have a look. We've got lots of videos on the channel where we go into these in a bit more depth. If you are using them in your practice, I really hope they're helping, and I hope they're going to help boost your score from an interpersonal point of view. Remember, interpersonal is not just about being nice or having a few key common phrases that you're supposed to put out in a case that suddenly boosts your interpersonal score or becomes more empathetic, for example. It's about making sure there's a dialogue between you and the person, that there's a lot of rapport going on, there's some genuineness being shown in the way that you're gathering your data. And when these 3 Arora R's are put into a consultation, they can really help to demonstrate those key points and to boost that rapport and leave you feeling that actually I feel like I'm having a conversation rather than I'm just doing a tick box to get some information for an exam. So if you found this of some value, we teach this a lot on our courses, on our mocks, on our online courses, our audiobooks. So please use the coupon Arora Video 10 for 10% off anything on the website, whether it's plab 2 material, RCA material, CPSA material, CSA material, or any other role play based consultation based exam. If you like this video, please do subscribe to the channel, put a comment, share the video if you can, and let's try and help as many people as we can. I am about to go off to a wedding in the beautiful city of Chandigarh. Once again, you can see the sun is starting to set now, so I'm really looking forward to a good evening ahead. Our taxi should be downstairs anytime soon. You know the hashtag, Campus will pass, hashtag I went with Arora. Have a super, super day.